Have you ever stopped to think that the ingredients in your shampoo or your cleaning spray could actually tell you something about a company's financial future? I know, it sounds a little strange, right? But it turns out hidden inside those chemical formulas is a really compelling story of risk and innovation. So today, let's dive into how one very specific accounting standard helps us read that story, connecting the dots between chemicals and, well, cash flow.
We all have them. That collection of stuff under the sink, in the shower, on the bathroom counter. All those household and personal care products. They're just part of our daily routine. But for the companies that make them, and especially for the investors who back them, these everyday items can carry some serious and often hidden financial risk. So that really brings us to the main question here. What financial risks are actually hiding on your bathroom shelf? And I'm not just talking about product safety in the way we usually think about it. We're talking about how the very chemical makeup of these products can be a red flag for future regulatory headaches, for big shifts in what customers want, and ultimately a real hit to the bottom line.
Okay, so if this risk is so hidden, how in the world do investors get a clear picture of it? Well, this is where a new framework comes into play. The answer is all about standardization, specifically a set of standards built to make these hidden risks visible, easy to compare, and financially relevant. They're called the SASB standards.
So SASB stands for the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, and their goal is pretty simple, but it's also incredibly powerful. Create a standardized way for companies to report on sustainability issues that have a real, material impact on their financial performance. Honestly, the best way to think about it is that they translate all this environmental and social data into the language that investors actually speak.
Yeah, how do they pull this off? Well, the whole framework is built on 77 different standards, and each one is tailor-made for a specific industry. Everything from software to steel. They pinpoint the key sustainability risks and opportunities for that industry, and then give companies concrete metrics to measure how they're doing. This gives investors the hard data they need to really assess a company's long-term prospects. And what's really important is that these standards are now part of the International Sustainability Standards Board, which gives them a ton of global credibility.
Obviously, we can't get into all 77 standards today, so instead, we're going to zoom way in on just one disclosure topic from the Household and Personal Product Standard. It's called Product, Environmental, Health, and Safety Performance, and believe me, it gets right to the heart of this whole chemical question.
So the standard takes this really fascinating approach. It doesn't just ask a simple question like, hey, are you using potentially harmful chemicals? No, it asks a much sharper question. How much of your revenue actually depends on them? Let's start by looking at the risk side of that equation. This quote, which is straight from the standard itself, just frames the issue perfectly. We all see it. Consumer awareness is way up, and regulators are paying much closer attention. Chemicals that used to be totally standard are now under a microscope. And for a company, that kind of scrutiny isn't just a PR problem, it's a direct threat to sales, and it could force them into some very expensive product reformulations down the road.
Now, what's so brilliant about the SASB approach is how it sets up the analysis. It looks at two sides of the same coin. On one side, it measures what we'll call risky revenue. That's money made from products with certain chemicals of concern. And on the other side, it measures safer revenue, money that comes from products that were proactively designed to be less hazardous from the get-go.
All right, let's break down that risky side first. The standard tells companies to use an official list from the European Chemicals Agency. It's called the Candidate List of Substances of Very High Concern, or SVHCs for short. The easiest way to think of this is as an official watch list for chemicals that regulators think might pose a serious risk.
And the standard is incredibly precise. A product gets flagged if it contains one of these substances at a concentration of just over 0.1% by weight. That is a tiny amount. It signals a really high degree of caution. Basically, it's saying that even trace amounts of these chemicals can put a company's revenue at risk.
So you put it all together and you get our first key metric. The standard requires companies to report the total amount of revenue they earn from any product that crosses that tiny 0.1% threshold. And just like that, an abstract chemical risk becomes a hard number on a financial report.
But here's the thing. SASB doesn't just focus on the negative. It also gives us a way to measure the solution. So let's flip over to the other side of the coin and see how this builds a much more complete picture by tracking the revenue that comes from proactive, safer design. The whole framework for this positive side is called green chemistry. Now, it's not a specific formula. It's more of a philosophy. It's a set of 12 guiding principles for chemists and product designers to create stuff that is just safer by its very nature, from the raw materials they use to how the product breaks down after we're all done with it. So what does that actually look like? Well, the standard points to a few of the 12 principles. For instance, are you deliberately designing molecules to be effective but also non-toxic? That's principle 4. Are you using renewable materials, like stuff from plants, instead of from petroleum? That's principle 7. And this one is just brilliant because it shows the long-term thinking. Are your products designed to break down harmlessly in the environment? That's principle 10.
And hey, just like with the risky chemicals, there's a metric that ties this proactive design straight to the company's finances. It asks companies to report their total revenue from products that were created using these green chemistry principles. It's the perfect counterbalance, right? It measures innovation and opportunity.
Okay, so now we have these two really powerful numbers, risky revenue versus safer revenue. What does an investor actually do with this information? Well, this is where it all comes together. This is what provides that clear verdict on a company's strategy.
Let's put ourselves in their shoes for a second. If you're an investor and you're looking at a company that makes household products, what does comparing these two revenue streams really tell you about where that company is headed?
I mean, just take a look at this. It paints such a clear picture. You've got Company A on the left with this huge chunk of its revenue tied to products with these chemicals of concern, and almost nothing coming from green chemistry innovation. Then you've got Company B, which is the complete opposite. Its revenue is overwhelmingly driven by safer, more forward-thinking product design. You really don't need to be a chemist to understand the story this slide is telling.
So for an investor, the takeaway is crystal clear. A high amount of revenue from those chemicals of concern signals some major risk. It suggests the company might get slammed by new regulations, be forced into costly redesigns, or just fall out of favor with customers. On the flip side, a high amount of revenue from green chemistry signals opportunity. It shows a company that's innovating, getting ahead of regulations, and building a much stronger competitive advantage for the future.
In the end, what these metrics reveal is something pretty profound. This data isn't just some number buried in a sustainability report. It's a direct reflection of a company's core strategy. It shows us whether they are anchored to the risks of the past or if they're actively investing in the innovations of the future. The real question for all of us, whether we're investors or consumers, is which future are they choosing?